Here's the real reason why Tesla will be the only ones that will have robotaxis and others will not. Lex Friedman just had Andrei Karpov on his podcast. Andrei helped Tesla develop its full self-driving capabilities that Tesla has currently. And here is what he has to say about lidar.
I think this debate is always like slightly confusing to me because it seems like the actual debate should be about like, do you have the fleet or not? That's like the really important thing about whether you can achieve a really good functioning of an AI system at this scale.
So who else has the scale of a big fleet? Who else has this advantage? One company comes to mind, like Tesla. No other manufacturer really comes to mind that's in the West. China, that is going to be interesting, but outside of that, no one is even really trying, is the whole point. Everyone else seems to be focused on lidar, but lidar just one sensor. It's expensive. It adds extra noise. There's extra distortion in your signals. Same with, for example, radar. You have to account for all of that. And if you don't have the data, it's not really going to work because the data, a lot of data, is what drives any AI model, basically.
Toughest parts of the vision problem of driving.
Well, basically, the sensor is extremely powerful, but you still need to process that information. And so going from brightnesses of these pixel values to, hey, here's the three-dimensional world is extremely hard. And that's what the neural networks are fundamentally doing. And so the difficulty really is in just doing an extremely good job of engineering the entire pipeline, the entire data engine, having the capacity to train these neural nets, having the ability to evaluate the system and iterate on it. So I would say just doing this in production at scale is like the hard part. It's an execution problem.
So the data engine, but also the sort of deployment of the system such that it has low latency performance.
Yes.
So it has to do all these steps.
Yeah, for the neural net specifically, just making sure everything fits into the chip on the car.
Yeah.
And you have a finite budget of flops that you can perform and memory bandwidth and other constraints. And you have to make sure it flies. And you can squeeze in as much compute as you can into the tiny.
What have you learned from that process? Because maybe that's one of the bigger, like, new things coming from a research background, where there's a system that has to run under heavily constrained resources,
right,
has to run really fast. What kind of insights have you learned from that?
Yeah, I'm not sure if there's too many insights. You're trying to create a neural net that will fit in what you have available, and you're always trying to optimize it. And we talked a lot about it on the AI day, and basically the triple backflips that the team is doing to make sure it all fits and utilizes the engine. So I think it's extremely good engineering. And then there's also all kinds of little insights peppered in on how to do it properly.
This is why I said that I don't think full self-driving is going to be solved on current hardware that Tesla is using, hardware 3.0. Hardware 4.0 is coming out soon. And I mentioned this about half a year ago now, that Tesla is probably maximizing its current compute using its current hardware, and that is one of the big limitations by itself. I mean, to keep pushing forward, you have to start to get really creative because you are so resource constrained when you're using the FSD computer that's inside the car right now. I mean, we had that same hardware now for how long? It has been a while. So since then, of course, we had quite a bit of progress in the world of computers and compute. If there's anyone who can do a triple backflip, it's going to be Elon Musk when it comes to engineering. Imagine an engineering triple backflip is what the engineers are doing when we are solving FSD.
Engine is what I call the almost biological feeling like process by which you perfect the training sets for these neural networks. So because most of the programming now is in the level of these data sets and make sure they're large, diverse, and clean, basically you have a data set that you think is good, you train your neural net, you deploy it, and then you observe how well it's performing. And you're trying to always increase the quality of your data set. So you're trying to catch scenarios basically that are basically rare. And it is in these scenarios that the neural nets will typically struggle in because they weren't told what to do in those rare cases in the data set. But now you can close the loop because if you can now collect all those at scale, you can then feed them back into the reconstruction process I described and reconstruct the truth in those cases and add it to the data set. And so the whole thing ends up being like a staircase of improvement of perfecting your training set. And you have to go through deployments so that you can mine the parts that are not yet represented well in the data set. Mm-hmm. So your data set is basically imperfect. It needs to be diverse. It has pockets that are missing, and you need to pad out the pockets. You can sort of think of it that way.
And guess which company has the fleet to collect all of that data? The rare cases, edge case scenarios? Which company? Waymo fleet size, which is basically Google, is absurdly small. How are we ever going to solve full self-driving? I mean, they can do it with lidar in those limited areas, but Andre is saying that you have to map out that whole area down to this precision, which is a centimeter, which is basically half of an inch for you Americans. I'm still not used to inches and feet, having come from Europe to Canada. In Canada, we do use inches, not so much as you guys do in America, though. So just imagine some mouse scratching the road, changing the road somehow. And then because now there's a difference of 1 inch in the road, your whole model falls apart. Obviously, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but that's the whole point. This is what Andre is saying. So if you think that you can solve everything using a vision approach, why even pursue lidar? There is actually a reason for that. If you think you're not going to be a winner, then it sort of makes sense. If you think you can make lidar work for a little bit of tiny amount of time before Tesla scales its full self-driving using vision approach, you can capitalize on that limited opportunity for just a tiny little bit, because Tesla, when it solves full self-driving overnight, it is not going to produce 300 million vehicles in one single year. That's not going to happen. It will take a long time.
So Tesla last year removed radar from the sensor suite, and now just announced that it's going to remove ultrasonic sensors, relying solely on vision, so camera only. Does that make the perception problem harder or easier?
I would almost reframe the question in some way. So the thing is basically, you would think that additional sensors...
By the way, can I just interrupt?
Go ahead.
I wonder if a language model will ever do that if you prompt it. Let me reframe your question. That would be epic. That's the wrong prompt. Sorry.
It's like a little bit of a wrong question, because basically you would think that these sensors are an asset to you.
Yeah.
But if you fully consider the entire product in its entirety, these sensors are actually potentially a liability, because these sensors aren't free. They don't just appear on your car. Suddenly you need to have an entire supply chain. You have people procuring it. There can be problems with them. They may need replacement. They are part of the manufacturing process. They can hold back the line in production. You need to source them. You need to maintain them. You have to have teams that write the firmware, all of it. And then you also have to incorporate them, fuse them into the system in some way. And so it actually like bloats a lot of it. And I think Elon is really good at simplify. Best part is no part. And he always tries to throw away things that are not essential because he understands the entropy in organizations and an approach. And I think in this case, the cost is high, and you're not potentially seeing it if you're just a computer vision engineer. And I'm just trying to improve my network, and is it more useful or less useful?
So once you consider the full cost of a sensor system, over sensors are often a liability. That's why you need the world's greatest engineer to see the whole picture, not just one tiny bit of an angle of a problem, and then you have that engineer, Elon Musk, work on the problem, and he can figure it out, and he can push the whole project. My name is Matt Postis. These are 48 reasons why I only own Tesla stock in my stock portfolio. I'll see you later tomorrow. Thank you for watching.